In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add text to your textures or to your meshes in Substance Painter. I'm going to show you how to add text, the one you can modify and change, as well as how to do straight up stamping of a symbol or some kind of a graphic that is found inside Substance Painter. There's going to be quite a few things that I'm going to show you how to do that many other tutorials fail to do. So here's the object that I'm going to do this on. It is a retro vending machine. And on the machine, there is usually some text. And we need to add that text into the mesh itself. So I'm going to add a bit of text here on the bottom, as well as something at the top. And then we'll see, maybe we'll add something onto the soda can. So in Substance Painter, there's no actual text tool that you can enable and then do your text like you could, for example, in Photoshop. So to do text in Substance Painter, you have to use alphas. So let's switch over to alphas. You're going to find this on the left-hand side and click on this icon right here. And these are all of your available alphas in Substance Painter. To find the text tool or the font tool, just search for font and filter everything out by font. You're going to see two things here. You're going to see font and then the name. And then you're going to also see text and then the name. The one that you want in order to edit the text that you're going to put onto your mesh is the one that has font in front, but not the text. These right here that says text, these are actual text logos that you cannot edit the text for. So you need to focus and work with the font. So let's go ahead and find something that we like. You can just hover over and see which font that you want to use. So let's go ahead and just choose this one. I'm going to left click on it and it is now active. Now we need to place this onto a layer, either an empty layer or a fill layer. So we can go ahead and edit it. In Substance Painter, you have two ways. You can add an empty layer, which has some downsides to it, and then you can edit and apply the text onto your mesh. And then you can do a fill layer with a black mask, which has a lot more control for what you're going to edit. And you'll be able to edit after you've applied the text. So let's do the most simple basic one without the ability for you to edit the base color or any of the other channels within it. And we're just going to do a straight, simple, empty layer. And then I'm going to show you the more controllable way. So I'm going to come over to my layers and let's do an empty layer. Just going to be this one right here. Let's add layer. So as soon as you do that, it will give you an empty layer. Let's go ahead and rename it. Text option 1. And let's go ahead and scroll down to the properties. The properties we need to enable are which of the channels do you want to have this layer to have? Do you want color? Do you want height? Do you want roughness? So basically you disable anything you don't need. Let's do just a straight color text without any height or roughness or metallic properties to it. So I'm going to go ahead and disable everything except for color. And let's set a color. Here's where you choose the color that you want to apply. I'm just going to leave it a white. And then I'm going to scroll back up. And right here, I still don't have alpha enabled for my text. So let's go ahead and left click on Substance on this text again. And as soon as you do that, you can see that the properties for this changed because I've created the layer first and then you need to apply the alpha font so it shows up in the properties. So let me go ahead and scroll back down just to check. Yep, I only have color. And right here, if I scroll up, you can see that alpha has changed to the font that I chose, to the alpha font. And the property you're looking for to change the text is right here on the parameters, substance. So this is what you can edit to see the text, and that's going to be the text that will be applied onto your mesh. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to type in ice cold. And then I'm going to come over to the mesh, just hover over where I want this text to be, and you can see it's already appearing. However, it is very small. So there are a couple of shortcut keys and a few ways for you to begin to adjust how large that font is going to be stamped. So if I go ahead and just left click right now, it will stamp it. And here's our text. So I'm going to go ahead and undo, Control Z. And the first things I want to take a look at is inside the properties. I want to make sure I can change the size right here. So this will increase the size of that text. I also want to make sure that my flow is set to 100 and my stroke opacity is also at 100. If these are lower, then the intensity of your font, of the color, and whatever other channels you may have are not going to come in as strong. You can also change the flow, the size, and the stroke opacity right here at the very top. The shortcut keys for changing this on the fly inside the viewport, Control and left click, hold and drag while moving the mouse up and down, this will rotate the text. And if you hold Control and right mouse click and drag left and right, this will increase the size. You can also come in onto your right hand side in the properties. There's going to be a angle for you to adjust here, angle. So you can use the slider to rotate as well. So if you need a specific rotation angle, so you need to be completely straight, just drag the slider and change the angle. So let me go ahead and hold Control, right click, hold and drag to get the size right. And I can do this stamping of the text inside my perspective viewport, or I can change over to a orthographic viewport. So I am a little bit more precise on how this is being stamped. So if I go to the top right, I can use the drop down menu right here and change to perspective view or orthographic view. Orthographic will give you a little bit more precise positioning of your text. You're not going to get any distortion. So if you switch over, shortcut key is F6, and then you can hold down Alt, left click and drag as you rotate, and hold Shift. This will snap your view to one of the sides, front, top. This way is going to be a little bit more precise than having to try to place this text if you need it very accurately inside the perspective view due to distortion and maybe a camera angle. But you can also rotate snap inside the perspective view as well. So now I'm just going to go ahead and position this text. Let me hold Control, right click, drag, and here's the text that I want to place. So let's go ahead and left click right there, and here's our text. Let me switch over back to perspective and rotate, and here's our text that's been applied. So all we did was we stamped the text onto the mesh on an empty layer. Now the only downside with this first option, with this first method, is if I wanted to change any of the properties for this. So if I scroll down and let's say I wanted to add height back in, or maybe roughness, and adjust those channels, I won't be able to do so. This is now part of the mesh. And if I wanted to change the color, for example, to another color, I can't do it. It won't be changed. So if I wanted to change the color, I would have to change it and then stamp it. So for example, let me change it to something else, like a blue. Once I change the color, I could restamp, and now that color will appear. But in terms of changing it after I place the text, I won't be able to do so. So that's the only downside with the empty layer method. But it is the simplest way to do text. And the only other option you have with this method is ability for you to go to that layer and maybe tone down the opacity. So you still have some control. Now method number 2 is going to give you a lot more control. So let's go ahead and do another sign here at the top. Let's do something like soda, or something like that. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. And in this case, I'm going to create a fill layer. This fill layer will give me whatever the default color, base color is, and fill the entire object with it. I'm not going to touch it just yet. Let's go ahead and rename this to text option 2. And to this fill layer, I'm going to right click on the icon and add a black mask. This will essentially remove everything. So I'll still be able to add a color, but now since I have a black mask, I'm going to make sure that black mask is selected, and that's where I'm going to add in my text. So let's find some other text that we want to use. Let's use this right here, font, dense, and script. It doesn't really matter, just as long as it has font in front. Now it's that font has been applied. If I scroll down into my properties, make sure the black mask is selected. Right here, we have our alpha font, and then here's the parameter to change. So let's go ahead and give whatever we want to type for the text to appear. And let's come over here and let's stamp it. So again, I'm going to hold down Control, right click, drag to make this large. And here's where my text is going to go. So let's go ahead and left click and stamp it. All right, so here's my text. Perfect. Now, because it's on a fill layer, I can go ahead and now select that fill layer, make it active, then come down to my properties, and I still have all of my channels, and I can still adjust them and see the result appear and change what that looks like. So I haven't changed any of my channels yet. So let's say I don't want my normal map. Let's go ahead and keep a metal. Let's keep roughness. Let's keep everything here. So I can go ahead and let's say I want to change my color now. I'm going to come down to my base color and let's change it to, I don't know, something like blue. Now you can see that I'm changing the color now. Then let's go ahead and maybe change the height. I'm going to scroll down and let's add a bit of height to it. So it looks like the text will be raised. And I can adjust my roughness, maybe make it more rough or maybe more shiny. And then I can make this metallic, change it to 1. So this will be available to me to change on the fly anytime I want. Lots of control here. Now with both methods, you cannot change this text. Once you've applied the text onto your mesh, that's it. If you wanted to restamp it and do some kind of other text, what you could do is you could right click on the black mask, clear the mask, and then restamp the text. And you would edit the text, change the font, or maybe change what it says, and then restamp it. So that's the only way to actually update it after you've put some text onto your mesh. But it is pretty quick. And this is the better method in my opinion, because you can change and adjust the properties in the channel as well as the colors to whatever you need after the fact. Now let me go ahead and undo. So I cleared the text. I'm going to show you how to maybe add a bit of kind of breakup to the text. So this font is extremely straight on, like nothing's broken up on the sides. It's font straight through. And if you wanted to maybe have some breakaway of the font, like peeling parts or just something's being taken away from the font, so it's not completely clean and perfect. What you could do is you can apply a grunge mask or grunge texture right before you stamp in order to break that text up. I'm going to make sure I select the black mask. I'm going to come down to the very bottom until I see grayscale uniform color. And I'm going to go ahead and left click on this and I can search for grunge, and this will give me a bunch of grunge mask textures that are available with Painter, with Substance Painter. And I can just go ahead and select one and go ahead and load that in. And now this will be used to break up the text, the font that I put on. So now if I go ahead and left click to stamp it, you can see that it's kind of breaking away using that texture as a way to break up the font, the text. If I don't like that, I can go ahead and maybe load in a brand new one and do the same thing. Let me go ahead and undo. And if you don't like any of them, you can go back to the straight up font by going to grayscale and just removing it by clicking this X. Anytime you do this though, just be aware that it resets the grayscale uniform color to 0.5. So if you try to stamp it, it's not going to be as intense as it was before. So let me undo, put it back up to 1, and now I get my full intensity back for the font. So that's a great way to break things up by using the grayscale grunge map. Alright, let me do another option. And this time I'm going to use, I'm going to put some text on this Coke can. So let me look for something else. First, I'm going to go ahead and do my second option where I add a new fill layer. Let me go ahead and choose the color that I want. So let's say I just want that another blue. And then I'm going to add a black mask to this. So this is going to be, let's say, font on soda can. I'm going to right click on this and add a black mask. So it masks everything out, and then I can go ahead and just add the text onto whatever I need. I'm going to make sure the black mask is selected. I'm going to look for my font that I want to use. So let's go ahead and use this one. I'm going to go into the properties, scroll up, and type in the font that I want to use. So let's do WOLD. That's going to be on the soda can. So here I have a little smaller section to put this on. So I'm going to use some of the shortcut keys to try to fit this in there. But I'm going to show you actually a better way to do this than in 3D view. So the first option is if you go ahead and start rotating, Alt, left click and drag, and then hold down Shift. It'll snap my view to front, to side, to top. And then if I want more precision, I can change it to orthographic view. So if I press F6, it'll remove that perspective distortion. Go ahead and hold down Control, right click to make the text smaller, as well as hold Control and left click and up and down to change my font so it's angled to the side. If I want more precision, again, I can come down to my angle property in the settings till I find angle and change this to, let's say, 90. or maybe I want it the other way. It doesn't really matter. But here I have a lot more control, so let's do 270. And I can go ahead and left click and stamp this on top of the can. However, sometimes you want a lot more precision than you are given inside your perspective view or your orthographic view. So what you can do is you can do this inside the UV editor view. If you hit F1, this gives you a 1x1 look where you have your 3D view on the left, and then you have your UV editor or UV layout on the right. If you press F2, gives you 3D view. If you press F3, gives you straight UV layout only. So let's go ahead and press F1 so I can see both. And here's my Coke can on the bottom. And I can use this view right here and make my stamp rather than having to do this inside the perspective. So I'm going to find exactly where I'm going to place it and do exactly the same thing I would do in 3D, but do it in the UV layout. A lot more precision doing it this way. And again, since I'm doing it as a fill layer, I can go ahead and maybe change my font to whatever I need, to whatever I want, and update it on the fly, as well as disabling any of the channels that I may not want to use, or maybe even re-enabling. And for one last option, I want to show you a couple of other settings that are going to be very useful for you. So let's go ahead, come back and press F2 so we get back to 3D view. Let me go ahead and create an empty layer. I'm not going to do this with a fill layer because I just want to do this quickly and I don't need to re-edit. I'm just going to show you a few things that you may come across and how to fix them really quick. So I have an empty layer, and let's go ahead and select a font. So I'm going to choose the Substance font, doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to make sure it's on, and then let's go into properties. I'm going to scroll down to parameters, and I'm just going to type in the longer text. So sometimes your text is so long that when you try to stamp it, I'm going to go ahead and hold Control, right click, hold, make it bigger. You can see that the text is being included. And when you stamp it, it doesn't show up. So what you can do is to fix this is adjust the size. So there's going to be two sizes inside your properties for that layer. There's going to be a brush size, and that's not the one you want to use. You want to scroll down until you see the alpha right next to parameter right here, the size, and this is what you want to adjust. So it's change this size first until you see the text appear completely inside the brush. And then you can change the brush size by holding down Control, right click, and now you can see, I can see everything in here and nothing's been included. And then you can stamp it. So that's one thing that I've come across quite a few times, and that's how you would fix that. And then the next part is the ability for you to add some graphics, some stamps. So instead of doing a text, again, anything you see as font is a text tool. You are able to find the parameter in the properties and re-edit this. However, for anything else, for example, this text right here, that's just straight up graphic. So if I go ahead and enable level, for example, and I come down to the settings for it, and right here on the alpha, you see there is no parameter for me to edit. So this is just the text stamp, and there's no way for you to edit. So just be aware that text is actually just actual graphic. And you can go ahead and do the same thing as you would with anything else. It's not an actual font for you to change. But you would do the same thing as you would with anything else. Anything alpha, you would just use it the same way. Let me show you one thing that you may need to adjust and change for some parts of the stamping to appear correctly. I'm going to use this sign multiply, for example, and that's how I did a little. Actually, I used a different tool. Let me go ahead and clear font. Basically, you have quite a lot of alphas for you to use and stamp with. Basically, I had a little graphic element that I put around these buttons. So let me find something similar. And it's going to be this one right here. This star sun. And then I'm going to go ahead and make it smaller. So first I'm going to go ahead and begin to rotate. And then I'm going to start snapping, holding down Shift. So it's straight. And I'm going to lower the size. Control, right click, hold. And let's zoom in a little bit closer. So I can go ahead and let's say I want to stamp something around this button. And let me go ahead and change my color. Scroll down. I want this to be white. And I don't want any other channel. Again, this is just really quick. I'm going to start left clicking and stamping. And obviously I'm stamping in 3D view and then stamping onto the button. All right, no problem. Let's go ahead and switch over to F1 so I can see my 2x2. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do this inside the UV editor. So I know the buttons are not part of this UV layout. I mean, they're not right there. The buttons are somewhere right here. So that means I can just go ahead and stamp that graphic and not worry about having it stamp and be all over on top of the buttons. However, when I do this, for some reason, it's still stamping right across my button, even though the UVs are right here. So this is a setting inside the properties that you need to change. So let me go ahead and undo. Actually, let me redo this. So I'll keep that one on. So here's what happens with the default settings, but I don't want it to appear on the buttons, and it shouldn't. Technically, it should not. So to fix this, I need to come back to my properties for the layer, and I need to take a look at the alignment. The alignment is what's doing this. So to avoid this problem right here, you need to change alignment from tangent wrap to UV. And now if I go ahead and inside my UV editor, if I go ahead and start stamping this, you can see that it's only doing it to my UV layout, and it's not wrapping around another part of geometry. Now the tangent wrap is useful, but in this case, when I'm doing straight up stamping for very specific graphic elements, it is not useful. And now you can see that I've avoided that problem for all the other buttons. Sometimes if you encounter this issue, that's how you fix it. You just need to change your alignment to UV. So that is how you do text with various different methods, different options, as well as some problems to overcome, how to break up the text using the grunge map, and how to have full control by using fill layers. And that way you can go back to edit any of your channels, change color, and adjust after the fact. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you like this straight to the point approach without any nonsense, so you can quickly learn and get what you need, give it a like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.